So as you can tell, it's raining in Chicago today. I've always really liked the sound of rain. Not so much being caught in the rain without an umbrella, but in the comfort of my living room watching TV and the sound of rain starts. It's a good opportunity to put up the mic here by the window and get some rain sounds accompanied by the many sounds of Chicago's industrial ambience, such as cars. I live right next to the train, so that'll be going by here and there. Seems to be a constant burden in a lot of my recordings, so I often record at night when the train isn't rolling. But for the most part, it's pretty doable here in this house to make a.s.m.r. recordings. I live in a neighborhood called Pilsen, which is a very noisy neighborhood despite being pretty low action. I just have neighbors who like to party a lot, and neighbors with barking dogs, and a lot of people who do a lot of handiwork. So, despite all the noises, it's actually generally quiet at this very moment. It's about 30 degrees here in Chicago. The rain chilled out a little bit here, but it's predicted to start up again any moment now. And to accompany me with my little session here next to the window, I have a hot cup of black licorice tea, which is my favorite flavor. I'm a big black licorice fan. It's not a lot of people's cup of tea, no pun intended. Drinking out of my hubby cup. I don't do too many videos where I include my face along with the things that I have to say. I feel like I don't make things with the idea of being physically impressionable, but gotta give some sort of motion in this video, so thought I'd sit here and talk a little bit about a.s.m.r, my time in Chicago. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about this guy out here who's using a power saw right now, if you can hear. It's been a good run. I've lived here for almost a decade, but I've only lived in this house for about 3 years. And prior to that, I lived in a number of different places here in Chicago. Most of them very bad, so it was nice to finally have a place that I can live in without constantly thinking about where I'm going to live next. I moved to Chicago in 2014, directly out of high school. I grew up in Great Falls, Montana, which seems to be a rarity here in Chicago. Not a lot of big states with small populations that usually make their way to big cities and actually stay there. I came here with the interest of pursuing music, which, although it's taken me nearly a decade to actually get somewhere with it, I'm finally in a good place these days where I'm in a number of situations that have some potential. Sometimes I see them as limited potential, but who knows where things will lead. I play in a handful of bands here, and I write a lot of music of my own, which is something that I hoped I would be doing by the time that I actually had moved up to Chicago. And I've always had an interest in recording and recording on the computer, recording at home, was always more of an interest than performance, being a performing musician. But you can't really have one without the other in this world. If you want to do something successful, you have to kind of use one to promote the other. But recording at home is very comforting for me, especially when I can do it alone, now that I finally have a place to myself where I can work undisturbed and without wandering eyes and ears judging me. So naturally, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to start recording ASMR. I used to joke about it all the time. I feel like people didn't believe that I would actually have an interest in recording ASMR because of the obtuse nature of it. But I have everything that it takes to do it. The time, the space, the equipment. So my interests in ASMR started as early as like elementary school, when we used to listen to tape cassettes of audiobooks, and I would listen to the sweet dictation and alliteration of the speakers in those studios. I just really liked the sibilance and the subtleties and the bass of their voice. But back then I didn't really have a name for it. There wasn't a name for it actually until about 2015, when the idea of ASMR began to circulate. But in high school, I started an interest in finding YouTube videos that exhibited elements of ASMR through soft-spoken narrative. A lot of those were video game collection videos, and I would listen to people talk about their video games in this quiet room, and people were usually very reverent, or accompanying by their long for nostalgia and personal interests. It had an impact on me, and I used to just listen to those videos just over and over again for the sound of just quiet subtleties, and feels very reminiscent of when I was, in first grade listening to audio cassettes and didn't have a care in the world. But now with the pressures of adulthood and expectations and preliminary future, it's good to explore some of those feelings somewhere you can capture them, archive them. So in 2015, I discovered the YouTube channel Gentle Whispering, which is the first time that I heard the term ASMR. And that was a huge moment for me, because it was just finally something that I could use as a term for search engines to find other videos like that. I finally had an outlet to research the idea of ASMR. And at first I was a bit of a closet ASMR enthusiast, because a lot of people didn't quite understand it. A lot of people thought it was sexual. A lot of people thought it was just a strange fad. But now it's become very universal and popular, and it's even made its way into the memedom. Internet presences joke about it as much as they praise it. So I kind of was a little bit more outspoken about my interests in ASMR at that point. So eventually I started kind of categorizing the ideas of what I like in ASMR. And then as I began to record ASMR myself, I picked up on more things that are useful and ways to develop sound that sounds more appealing to me. Having the right amount of high end and low end, mic positioning, camera lighting, how to deal with outside noises, how to deal with electrical hum, AC units. There's a lot of stuff, however, that you can't really control, stuff that happens outside of your house. And there's been many a video where I've had to start over for nonsensical interruptions. You know, sometimes the camera on my phone just stops recording for some reason. I actually never have had a video camera. Of all the things that I've documented and recorded in my life, they've always been on the iPhone, ironically enough. So, now that ASMR is more universally acknowledged and commonplace, I thought it'd be a good time as ever to get Toloro a.s.m.r. up and running, and I don't know how much more of it I'm going to be doing, because there's only so many ideas that I can run through without being repetitive. But this is a better time than ever to be pursuing interests like this. I get pretty prolific with my music recordings. I enter these creative episodes where I fixate on musical ideas so much that I can't really do anything other than that. And my personal life and physical health sometimes start to tank as a result of that. So, having a moment where I can step aside and start doing something else of interest has been a good way to kind of balance out that fixation, that kind of almost addiction to writing music. There's a lot of it that was released in the last few years since the pandemic. As the world's changed, it's changed me as well. It's made me far more isolated and comfortable with living in solitude here in my house, doing what I do without judgment, you know. And I feel like I've gotten a little too comfortable doing so. Which of course maybe ASMR was a result of that, but I feel like ASMR is a lot less laboring of an activity to do, because it doesn't take as much time. I can do these recordings in one sitting. I can develop everything and upload everything to YouTube in one sitting, so it doesn't take constant reevaluation and rethinking and a lot of time for marketing like music does. It's kind of just a hobby and some way that I can reflect on my interests at the time. Hopefully, 10 years from now, I can hop on YouTube and see how much has changed from then and now, how much has blossomed. I've never been a particularly politically minded person. I'm not really a socially conscious person. I take a lot into consideration, but I don't really do much in my personal life to go out of the way to act on certain beliefs, Some people might dictate that as me having low moral character. But, everyone is on this planet for a short amount of time, and I'm here mostly to make the best use of my time. Sounds kind of selfish, but at least I'm staying out of the way of other people and not causing problems for other people to attend to. Chicago's a very liberally minded city where a lot happens, and there's a lot of things that you can participate in to there's the train again, to act upon certain movements. I've seen a lot of things happen in Chicago, especially in the last 6 years or so. I remember when I was in college, and one of the big things, the first thing that really made me feel like I was in a big city, like the city was bigger than just a population, was when the Cubs won the World Series. And it was the first time that they'd won a World Series in 108 years, I believe. And not only was the city of Chicago just going crazy, but everyone from around the country was coming to Chicago. It was, I remember leaving college and going out of the city, and just the streets were all shut down because they were just flooded with people, all celebrating this monumental moment in American history, and just trying to get on the train, and everyone is singing songs on the platform. It was, I believe, like the fifth or sixth largest gathering of people in human history, and it happened right there in Chicago, and I got to see it firsthand. But that's one of the more glorifying moments of my time in Chicago, as a lot of the other historical events that happened here are usually far more tragic and a result of negative mentalities. I was here when all the protests were happening downtown. I've seen a lot of, not necessarily experienced it myself, but a lot of horrible things happen to people out here in the city. Sounds like the rain's starting to pick up a little more. Chicago's definitely been a lot better to me than Montana has, but it's had far more ups and downs. For every great experience, there's a bad experience. Everything seems to even it out. I feel like I've often categorized things by good years and bad years, as if the first 2 years of Chicago were excellent, the following 2 years were bad, 2 years after that bad, and then good, and then the pandemic happened, bad, and things are good again. The roller coaster of emotions. Now I'm really enjoying the sound of rain here now that it's picking up. I've always had a deep fascination with water. Part of that may have had to do with the fact that I was born in Hawaii, which was a An even stranger fact for those who know me in Chicago as being from Montana, to throw Hawaii into the mix. But for as long as I can remember, I've always had a lot of dreams. Falling asleep and dreaming about water, both good and bad. But also dreams that involve a lot of creatures in the water, sea animals, both friendly and terrifying. A lot of dreams about aquariums and like resorts, beaches, caves. It's a darkly romanticized fascination with water and the ocean and rain as well. I'm a big fan of a nice cloudy day. When it's nice and sunny, it's no friend to me when I'm outside a lot because I burn very easily. I've always been more of a winter person, which could possibly attribute to my time in Montana growing up, where it's snowing all the time. I feel that Chicago, though, the winters have just become more unpredictable with every year that I've lived here. The first couple of years I felt like it snowed as much as I'd expected to snow, and then as the years went by it kind of started to eclipse in a way where it would be warm and then the snow would hit all at once really hard and really fast, and then it would go away again, and that's kind of continued to be the issue. This last December, it only snowed for maybe a week, and it hit so hard that it interrupted travel plans for everyone around the country. And then just like that, we're back to the rain, back to our 30-degree temperature out here. I've always had very bad luck with umbrellas for some reason. I've gone through so many umbrellas in my life, just them breaking from gusty winds, just leaving them on the bus or the train or in some place. I had an umbrella stolen one time. It's I don't know what it is. I wrote a song about it one time called I Left My Umbrella at Home. Most of the songs I write are actually deeply personal and typically wouldn't hold any meaning to any of the listeners. One time I gave a CD to my neighbor who lived across the way. She moved away back in November, but looking back, she probably thought that CD I gave her was very strange. Probably like nothing she's heard before. Very lo-fi and oddly specific and more like sound art than music, which most people don't expect to be given as a CD. I used to have 2 neighbors across the way here who had 2 dogs, and I love dogs. I wish I could have a dog, but I can't really care for one. I just don't have the time to be home enough to properly raise one. But those 2 dogs across the way were, to me, often felt like my dogs. Got my my dog fix for the day from them a lot. But now they're gone, so now it's very quiet out here in the courtyard. I have 2 other neighbors. The one who lives in the garden unit in the house in front of me. moved in somewhat recently. I've had a couple conversations with him, and the neighbor who lives above him has lived here longer than me, and she had a son who used to live there too, but now he lives a couple blocks down. I live in a coach house in Pilsen, Chicago, which is the perfect situation for a musician, because I can make a lot of noise and work at all hours of the evening and not have to worry about disturbing anybody. Those habits, I feel, have become less active as a musician. Bands have moved on to other practice spaces away from here, so I don't play loud music here nearly as often. Maybe one day I'll make a video for a tour of the house, perhaps. I used to use the sound of rain for like backing tracks, just ambient filler for a lot of my early lo-fi recordings, because the sound of rain is very subtle but constantly active. Not too much high end, not too much low end. It's great for filling space and recording in the within the stereo spectrum. In Chicago, it gets very dark around 4 o'clock now, and my sleep schedule is very out of whack, because I'm constantly going to bed at 2 in the morning and getting up at 10, so it feels like the day is already over, like, by the time I'm eating lunch, which is no different from today. This cup of tea here by the windowsill has cooled it off extra fast. I feel my parents worry about me a lot living in Chicago, as I often grant them with a number of scary, real, true stories of things that happen in the city. I've kind of been in proxy of a number of things that have happened, but I've never fallen victim to much, thankfully. There was one time I was robbed, sort of. I used to be very active in Chicago's DIY scene. I used to throw a lot of events and shows and parties of my own pre-pandemic. And at one event that I threw at my house, I had some stuff stolen, including my computer, which I desperately needed for college. That was unfortunate. And then just last year, I had my catalytic converter stolen from the car that I just bought. Didn't buy, but inherited like a month prior. And to have that stolen was just a huge inconvenience. But I've never been robbed at gunpoint, knife point, never had my life particularly threatened. I've never been in a car accident, never been in a car accident in Chicago, which is wild because I used to be a delivery driver out here and drove 5 days a week. My current job now is playing piano for ballet classes. which is a job that I enjoy, but it's not a job that quite pays the bills. I'm kind of looking for just more of that or something different, but I really can't go back to working a regular Joe job, like being a delivery driver, because I feel like I'm wasting my life if I'm not doing something that I enjoy doing. These piano gigs I actually got from a chance opportunity that I never thought I would pursue. But when I moved into this house initially, I actually did have a roommate, and he was a good friend of mine at the time, who I lived with in the house before, with another roommate that I was not good friends with. But he saw me grow through the DIY scene for years. And then in the days before the pandemic, he was working as a ballet accompanist as well. And due to scheduling, he needed to back out of his classes at one particular dance company. And he suggested that I try an audition, which at the time I was terribly underqualified. And the only reason I got it really was because one of my teachers was very old and frankly a bit senile and didn't really have much to say. And the other teacher I had was very new. We were both new, so she didn't really have anything to compare me to. But I've been playing piano for ballet classes for 3 years now, and it's tremendous to see the improvement that I've made within that time, because I never thought that I'd be in the place that I am now, looking back at songs that I was attempting to play at the beginning of that 3-year period and thinking I could never play this. And here I am today playing traditional classical pieces, pop tunes. When I first started, I was actually mostly playing video game music. And by that I mean music from The Legend of Zelda, which was a huge musical influence on me, and songs that I had already known how to play. So naturally, bringing it to these ballet classes, I was like, we got some blasting music out there, like usual. Yeah, a lot of cars driving by. It's the city. But yeah, in the early days of ballet, where I primarily played for children's classes, none of them ever recognized any of the music I ever played. A lot of it eventually was improvised primarily. That kind of became my winning stride in being a pianist, was my ability to be able to just play things on the spot, which has benefited me a lot. But now as an adult playing for adult classes, it's kind of had a change of heart where I've decided that playing known songs is more the route. Adults want to hear that more. I've also come to realize through playing for adults classes that most adults take ballet for exercise rather than for the art form. A lot of adults take classes who never took classes as kids, which I find surprising. It also seems a lot of kids really don't have an interest in ballet. They're just kind of put into it from their adult parents and don't have much of a say. My parents never really forced me into anything I didn't want to do, but naturally I wanted to try a lot of things. Tried a lot of sports at a young age. came to realize sports weren't really my forte. And then when I started playing saxophone in 5th grade, my interest in music started to blossom a little bit more. And then when I eventually picked up the guitar at age 13, my interests grew, and by the age of 16, I thought that music was something that I would like to pursue as a lifestyle. And my parents never really said no to anything that I wanted to try as a musician, but there also was very limited opportunity in my hometown, so I was sent away a lot to explore elements of music and meet other musicians. But never, not once in those days, did I ever think that I would be a pianist professionally. Honestly, 5 years ago, if you asked me what I would be doing, I wouldn't have assumed I'd be playing piano either. This microphone here, this is an Audio-Technica 2050, and I've had this for 7 years. I got it in Montana the first time I went back after 1 year of college, and it has been with me ever since. It's kind of on the cheaper side, has a lot of high-end, sounds pretty digital despite being a condenser mic, but it's not bad for catching the sibilance of my voice. I've never been much of a gearhead, to be honest, but I do like having stuff that's reliable, stuff that is quality, and I often become very familiar with the sounds and mechanics of the equipment that I use on a regular basis, like this microphone. These headphones here as well, also Audio-Technica, I've had for probably about 7 years as well, and they're kind of on their way out. There's a little bit of electrical noise in them, but I still use them on an almost daily basis. There was a point in time where I used to ride the train several times on a daily basis, and since getting a car last year, it's been a huge game changer. And now I take the train like twice a week, and I'm very grateful for that. Of course, it happens in a time where I'm living next to the train that's far less dirty and crowded than other trains that I've lived next to. Looks like the rain stopped again. The train keeps coming. Well, I don't think the rain is gonna start up again, so I think that maybe this will be a good time to end this conversation. I do like the sound of this position, but it being polluted with a lot of the sounds out there. Hoped I could get a little more rain and a little less cars driving by. But yeah, I hope this video helped you learn a little bit more about me, and a little bit more about my interests and feelings about rain and water and black licorice tea and all that. So maybe I'll do another one on a day where the weather is nice and sounds more ambient out there. Alright, thanks for watching.